Hello everyone, sorry about no videos for the past few days, but I decided to take a little break after that Chessable Masters 2020, and also I was in a hospital. But it's nothing serious, just having some checkups done. But if you guys are interested, I'm gonna mention something at the end of the video. But this is game 17 from the TCEC Super Final Season 18. A lot of you guys requested to show at least a few games, so that's what we're gonna do. So this is game 17, one of the nicer ones. Let's dive straight into it. So as usual, they are using pre-arranged moves to see how the engines will handle it in tricky situations, and this game is no different. So Leela with the white pieces opens with e4. Sorry about that. We have c5 by Stockfish and knight to f3. So knight f3, we have d6 and now d4. C captures, knight captures, and knight to f6. We have knight to c3 and of course a6. The knight of Sicilian is on the board. And here, well, you can play a lot of things. We have bishop to g5. So e6 and f4. This is the standard main line. We have bishop e7 and queen to f3. Queen to c7 and a queenside castle. Now we have knight b to d7. So these are all the top moves that are played even in grandmaster games. We have g4 preparing to capture and well, extend the pawn all the way to g5, and black of course will start his expansion on the queen side. So Stockfish goes for b5. We have captures, and now g5, pushing the knight back. We have knight to d7, and now pushing even further with f5. And it's a very interesting idea. First off, you're offering this pawn here, so black can even capture it with check, but you're just gonna play king to b1, and next black still has to deal with all of these threats. You can even use rook to g1 with tempo, as the bishop will be hanging on g5, so it's not the greatest of options. So here we have knight to c5, and now comes f6, so busting open black's king side. We have g captures on f6, g captures on f6, and now bishop to f8. And here there are a lot of moves that can be played here, but here we have rook to g1, and this is the last book move. So it is as of this position that Leela and Stockfish are now playing on their own. So here we have h5, not allowing ideas like queen to h5, as there would be a lot of pressure here. The e6 pawn is weak, and black wants to develop the bishop over to b7. So h5 and now a3. And here there are moves have been played here like bishop d7, rook to b8, but the move Stockfish plays, queen to b6, is actually a new move in the position. So already as of move 17 we have a completely new game. So Leela continues with a nice prophylactic king to b1. Why not? Black still has a dark square bishop, so it does make sense. And Stockfish starts the attack with b4. And okay, a captures on b4, queen captures, and now the wonderful rook to g7. And this is why I said that this game is like the second bravest rook in chess history, as we all know which rook is the first bravest rook in chess history. If you haven't seen it, I will put a link to that game in the description, although it's a very old game and a very old video. I will have to do a remake of that video in 60 frames per second at some point. But do check it out if you haven't. It's just a masterpiece for your friends at the bar and the library. But yeah, here Leela offers the rook, and it's very interesting what happens if the rook is accepted, because after bishop captures, pawn captures, this rook is under attack, and after you defend this, now comes knight to f5, simply defending, threatening knight d6 check, and once this knight is captured, then it's knight to d5, attacking the queen and also preparing knight to f6 check. And here it's really crazy. Let's say queen a5, knight f6 check, king moves, you're gonna capture the rook here, and now again it's very dangerous. If you move the knight, g8 queen just wins the game on the spot, so black has to sort of develop the queen side, move the king so the rook guards this square, but it doesn't help all that much. Queen can capture on f5, bishop captures here, and now queen f4 going after the d6 pawn, and that's pretty much it. The king can move, but still knight f6, you're gonna play g8 on the next move, and it's just game over. So here after rook to g7, of course Stockfish doesn't accept it, he goes rook b8, and here threatening checkmate on b2. So Leela has to defend. You could defend with b3, but that's no way to play in great style. So Leela goes for bishop to b5 with check. Now offers the bishop for closing the b file, but here just knight c6 attacks the queen and the rook. This is just better for white. So instead Stockfish decides for rook captures on b5, we have knight d captures on b5 and a captures on b5, and only now e5, again offering the rook, but now with e5, Leela cleared the way for the queen to c6 check. And again, it's super crazy if the rook is captured, because you just get captures rook g8, and now again queen to c6 check, and there is no good reply here. If bishop d7, queen a8 check just wins the rook. You're gonna block king e7, queen captures here, and it looks dangerous for white, but it's really not. There is no way for black to continue, and black will just get checkmated here. So instead, after e5, Stockfish says, I'm not interested in that rook, and yes, it is a very brave rook. So just bishop b7. First takes away the c6 square from the queen. We have queen to e3 now, and again, Leela offers the rook. So what can happen? Well, it's interesting. Now, if bishop captures, f captures, and rook g8, now there's the very interesting rook to d4 idea, and that's the stuff. Queen a5 and b4 just wins back material. After the queen moves, you can capture this guy here. And now it's now or never. You either get rid of this pawn or not. But if you capture it now, c captures on d6 gives white a beautiful pass to d6 pawn, and also the g1 square is defended, so there's no check for black here, and the white will again be better. So Stockfish, again not interested in the rook, goes queen to c4. Now if rook d4, you can go queen to f1 check. You can move your pieces, and also you clear the b4 square for the pawn. So here Leela goes e captures on d6. Again, the rook is offered, but you kind of don't want to play it again, because now this pawn guards this square, and if you get this, then queen g5, just there is no defense against this checkmate. It's just game over. Whatever black does, it's just over. Like, you can play f6, but I mean that's only prolonging the inevitable. So after e captures on d6, we have knight to d7, now blocking the passed pawn, but also going after the f6 pawn here. And now we have queen to a7, again offering the rook, but now it's a rook for two pieces, so not really all that impressive. So here queen to c6 defending, and only now that Stockfish defended everything properly, only now does Leela move the rook back. So rook to g5, and it's very important as it attacks the b5 pawn. So here we have queen to a6, Stockfish forces a queen trade. Well, not forces, basically offers, and Leela declines, just guarding this pawn, and nicely centralizing the queen. So bishop to c6, and now queen to d3, with a third attacker going after the b5 pawn, and of course if you push it, the queen just hangs. So here we have knight back to b6, but now feel free to pause the video and find the absolute best move for Leela while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on clearing the D file for your pieces, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's D7 with check. First open up the D file and then go after the B5 pawn, and that's exactly what happens here. We have knight captures back on D7, and only now knight captures on B5. So now you're threatening knight C7 check with a nice fork. Of course you have to do something about that. King D8 is played, but it's not all that great. Just H4. Leela says, I'm in complete control here, I'm just going to improve my position before doing anything else. So here we have queen to B7, but now knight to D6 with a nice double attack here. So of course Stockfish gets rid of the knight. We have captures, and now king to C8 unpinning, so the knight can finally move. But now rook to D3, preparing to bring the rook here for the final attack. But now queen C7, offering a queen trade. Leela again declines, queen A3, and now E5, starting to push the passed pawn, but now queen to e7, again just hoping to get rid of this pawn, so the f pawn now becomes a passed pawn. We have knight b6 now offering a queen trade, and here rook captures on e5, and now Leela finally trades queens, but now it's this position where Leela has two rooks against a rook, bishop, and knight. And usually the bishop and knight are much stronger, but here Leela also has two extra pawns, and two of those extra pawns are connected pass pawns. So it's not going to be easy for Stockfish. And sorry, the rook didn't capture, the pawn captured. I thought the rook captured, but yeah, it's actually three passed pawns. And it's not going to be easy. So bishop to d7, but now rook to d6. And now this is a very technical endgame, which of course both Leela and Stockfish would convert, but I was more interested in what happened prior to the endgame, but we are going to show it just the same. So here king to c7, pushing the rook back. We have rook to f6 going after the pawn, and now rook to e8. So there's nothing you can do to defend the pawn. You could try something like bishop here, but that's just not very good. You're just going to capture the bishop, and let's say after rook e captures on e6, f captures, just rook to f8, and you are either queening or winning material. So nothing about this move is helpful for black. So rook to e8 instead, but now rook captures on f7. So grabbing yet another pawn. Now it's 4 pawns to 1. Knight to c8, and now even rook captures on h5. So 4 pawns to 0. Of course, this is very nice. We have knight captures on e7, grabbing at least 1 pawn, and now b3. Now Leela has to activate the king and the queen side pawns. So king d6, we have rook to f2 now, bringing the rook back, and now knight to c6. We have rook to d2 with check, king to c7, and now rook to h7. Now preparing the h file for the pawn. We have knight to e5 and just h5 now. We have king to c6 and h6, so that is now a very impressive pass pawn. Bishop to f5, pushing the rook back, and rook to g7, preparing h7, so rook to h8, not allowing it, but now rook to f2. Now, okay, you can no longer guard the dh pawn successfully, but now you go after Stockfish pieces. So rook to f2, we have bishop to h7, and now king b2, just starting to improve the position. We have king d5, black does the same, and now rook to f6, nicely defending the pawn and cutting the king off from the 6th rank. Bishop to e4, now again opening up an attack towards the pawn, but now rook to b7, still keeping an eye on the b7 square. Knight to f3, and now rook back to e7. So here, with rook to e7, Leela is actually threatening rook to f4 with a double attack on the bishop, and you will not have any squares for it, as the king is blocking it. So you'd either have to move it, but then you lose the knight, or you remain here and then you lose the bishop. So here, Stockfish played knight to g5, but it's not much better. We have rook to a6, preparing rook to f5 check to pick up the knight here, and now bishop to f3. But there isn't much to be done here. We have rook to a5 with check, king to d6, attacking the rook. And now, of course, you cannot capture the knight because the rook hangs. So first rook to e3. And now this is attacked, and there's not much you can do. Even if you go for this, rook to g8 to defend the knight, you can just remove the defender of the bishop, and the resulting endgame would still be winning. I mean, it's 3 pawns to 0. So after rook e3, we have rook captures on h6, but now it was also in this position that Stockfish resigned the game, or rather, Stockfish and Leela agreed the advantage is just too big to continue this game, which is when resignation happens in their matches. So a brilliant victory by Leela, full of sacrifices, full of nicely blocked paths, full of everything, but in the end it is Stockfish that won the super final. So the era of old school engines is not over. This time Stockfish prevailed and won the super final. Out of 100 games, the result was 53.5 at 46.5 in Stockfish's favor. So Leela, season 19 can be all yours, but this one was all Stockfish. And there were some other interesting games. If you guys have your favorite, do use hashtag suggestion, and I will check it out. Now, regarding why I was in the hospital, I was getting an exam. I had a coronography and some other exam. I don't know what's it called, but basically I will have to get some heart surgery. I don't know when, probably in the next 6 months, but it's nothing new. I had this condition since birth. I was born with a defective heart valve, and well, I'm just gonna get a new one, an artificial one, and that's basically gonna be it. It shouldn't be all that much of a hassle, but we'll see how it goes. I will keep you guys informed. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Aaron Lennon, Simona Splunge, Enia Makel, Paul Adamski, and Ricardo Montaldo for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the TCEC Super Final, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.